One of the coolest things I've ever seen are these guitars made by a duo called Mutzil Lab. From Najeonchilgi comes an expertise in instrument creation by means of woodworking and metalworking. From Clara comes an expertise in two techniques called Mutzil and Najeon that both date back hundreds of years in Korea. And together, they create things like this. Ever since Najeonchilgi was a boy, he had an interest in music and drawing. He took guitar classes, learned to play, and as he grew older and began to think about what he wanted to do with his life, he came across a documentary called It Might Get Loud. In it was a scene where Jack White from the Stripes made a guitar out of a log. And it was from this video that Najeonchilgi realized, in theory, how simple it technically was to make an instrument.
Who says you need to buy a guitar?
But as he considered this, he also realized that he didn't want to make something that was just simple. He wanted to make something exceptional and cool. He set his sights toward this direction, started to do some research on how to achieve this, and it was then that he realized that this path came with one very big obstacle. There weren't any instrument making schools or classes in Korea. But instead of quitting, he had the idea that as long as he learned to work with wood and metal, he could probably find a way to figure out the rest. After all, Jack White was able to make one out of a log. He first started to collect instrument making books, most of which were in English or Japanese because there weren't any Korean ones. He studied the photos, translated what he could, and got himself mentally acquainted with the concepts. Upon entering Korean University, he chose a major of metalworking, and within half a year of starting, he went ahead and took his first shots at making a guitar. His first pieces weren't anything to talk about since he hadn't learned much about woodworking and metalworking yet. The shapes he produced were very crude and, in his own words, probably shouldn't call it a professionally made instrument. On the side, he learned what he could about woodworking and additionally started to spend a lot of time visiting a nearby market building called Najeonchilgi Music Arcade. In Korea, something I see here that isn't very often seen in the US are buildings that are filled with tons of merchants all selling the same things. Sometimes they're called trade centers or wholesale markets, and Najeonchilgi Music Arcade was one that sold instruments. Whenever Najeonchilgi would come by, he'd ask the merchants to touch and observe their products. Some were not so receptive, and over time got annoyed because they knew he was never gonna buy anything. A few though were okay with it. They let him handle and check out their instruments, but not enough to sit there and measure everything out. Whatever he noticed in his observations, he took into consideration for the pieces he continued to develop. Midway through college, as all Korean men are required to do, he served in the military and was luckily assigned duties that handled tools and tasks that were woodworking related. Not only did he cut down trees with chainsaws and clear out dense weeds with sickles, he also made furniture like tables and chairs, along with other projects for the army that needed the skill of woodworking. His time there ended up becoming the perfect opportunity to build upon his woodworking skills. And with the popularity of YouTube on the rise, he watched tons of videos about guitars and in his off time, drew and dreamt about the ones he'd one day make. When he went back to school, he immediately jumped back into instrument creation and by graduation had 3 guitars to present for his exhibition. One of his pieces was called The Pen, and in his own words, was a guitar that became a reality only because of the support of his friends. He listed it for crowdfunding, and not only was it successful, he started to make and sell them to customers. But despite the reception that he received for that piece, he didn't really like it himself. He noticed his creation had received a lot of comments about its look being oriental, even though he didn't intend for it to. And instead of fighting against it, he wondered what would happen if he leaned into it and made it even more oriental. To continue his pursuit of his craft, he turned his sights towards finding a studio space, and as an idea, wondered if learning to use Korean lacquer could potentially give his guitars an edge. Shindang Creative Arcade is what is known as an artist residency. Every year, artists of all kinds throughout Korea apply for a space, and I think that only about 30-something people are accepted. This includes the applicants that have already made it in previous years. Once in, the maximum number of the years you can be re-accepted is 3, and the reason why people want to get a space here is because you'll have cheap rent, access to some equipment, and have opportunities to network and collaborate with other like-minded artists. Lee Jung-hyun was one of those that were accepted, and directly across from his space was Ansora. Now, before I begin my introduction of Ansora, I think I should take a second to talk briefly about her craft. Najeonchilgi is the art of making mother-of-pearl designs and integrating them with another Korean art called ochil, a lacquering and finishing technique. Najeon meaning mother-of-pearl, ochil meaning lacquer, and gi representing craft or technique. Combine them together and you get Najeonchilgi. Both of these techniques are extremely difficult, time-intensive, and are slowly disappearing in Korea because, like many ancient techniques, the time and effort it takes to create and perform them doesn't yield a lot of return, and because of that, there aren't a lot of successors. Ansora is one of those few successors, and it's not just exceptional, she's continuing to get better at it. Her journey of Najeonchilgi starts during her college years. Before that, she focused mostly on painting. As she was applying to college, like many of us, she became unsure about whether or not painting was what she wanted to do with her life. Instead of going down the road of art, she instead chose a major called Cultural Heritage Sciences because she thought that she might want to do something focused around cultural history and literature. To her surprise, her major was about cultural heritage, but with a heavy focus around the preservation of metals. This meant a lot of chemistry and metal-related knowledge, neither of which had any correlation to her interests. After her first year of college, that shock prompted her to take a year off to reflect on her life and figure out what she should do. Without a clear answer, she decided to accept things as they were and return to school to power through it. One day, in one of her classes, Ansora was learning about the theories behind tangible and intangible cultural heritage. The topic of Najeonchilgi came up and she found herself intrigued. Throughout her life, these arts were something that she was always aware of, but never something that she learned about in depth. She became increasingly more curious, and once they moved past the subject in class, she continued to do additional research in her own time. The more she dug, the more she couldn't get enough. And before she knew it, Ansora realized that within her was a fire, a passion that she hadn't felt since her old days of painting. In that moment of awakening, she told herself, I need to do this. I need to get back to art. She reached out to one of her professors about this, and he connected her to a master to study under. And it wasn't just any master, by the way. Chung Soo-ha is a practitioner who's registered as National Intangible Cultural Heritage number 113, an honor acknowledging an individual's mastery over the craft of Najeonchilgi. And in her spare time, whenever she wasn't doing her due diligence with schooling, Ansora was training with him. 7 to 8 years later, Ansora had learned everything the master could teach. She graduated school and decided to test her skills by taking the test herself before the Cultural Heritage Administration. She passed, received a certificate for completing her training, and with this newfound confidence, began to seek out ways to expand her skills by applying Najeonchilgi to something beyond what she's already done. She looked for a studio, got accepted at the Shindang Creative Arcade, and directly across from her was Lee Jung-hyun. Upon meeting, the two artists found the edge they were looking for within each other. They shared their ideas, goals, and dreams, and one of them was a concept that Lee Jung-hyun created a long time ago called Mutzil research. The term Mutzil is a slight play of words. 멋지다 meaning cool, 일 meaning work, and together, Mutzil becomes a portmanteau meaning cool work. The idea of making it a research means that they'd always be experimenting and looking for ways to create or find cool things that pique their interest and curiosity, things with a certain kind of edge. And since the concept of Mutzil research was naturally bigger than the both of them, they decided to start with themselves. Lee Jung-young asked An-sora if she'd like to collaborate with him and make something cool. Immediately, she said yes. They shortened the concept to Mutzil Lab, a way to describe their own laboratory of sorts, and began their experiment to combine their crafts together. And from that, birthed the fusion of electric guitar and Najeonchilgi. These guitars were respectively the first and second pieces that they created together. Throughout their 3 years at the Shindang arcade, they created 2 to 3 pieces annually, tweaking their creations by fusing what they heard from both the art community and the musicians who used them. After leaving, they set up shop in the town of Seongbuk-dong, continued to make more guitars, and continued to grow in notoriety. In 2022, they entered a fantastic piece into the Great Guitar Build-Off and won 2nd place. And later that year, they entered another competition in Korea called the Craftsman Fair and won 1st. How cool their piece was for the Great Guitar Build-Off is really hard to describe. The effort put into the shape, the ochil lacquering on the body, the insanely intricate Najeon pattern on the plate behind the strings. Even the case was crazy with how it was charred in traditional Korean style and the custom-made soft interior made in Daegu. And if that isn't cool enough, check out this clip of a musician named Sang-hun playing it. The musician is not just playing the guitar, but with his technique is playing the song to sound similar to traditional Korean instruments. I don't know about you, but in my opinion, the level of craftsmanship and musical artistry of this guitar is just out of this world. Dare I say, cool? As Mutzil Lab looks into the future, they found that they have a lot of questions they're trying to answer. Will they continue with just guitars? Or is there another stage of evolution on the horizon? I think that what we can learn from Lee Jung-hyung and An-sora is not just the recognition of beauty that can come from combining traditional arts with modernity. I think that more importantly, we should take note of the courage it takes to follow one's passion against the odds, the insane power of sheer determination, and the possibilities that can come when you extend your goal beyond just yourself. Their story, to me, is a symbol of how creativity and perseverance were able to work effortlessly to unite the dreams of the past, present, and future. I have really enjoyed learning about this power duo, and I hope that you found something cool within their journey too. If you want to see their super cool build video of the guitar that won the Great Guitar Build-Off, I will leave a link for that in the description box below. Additionally, I will also be leaving links for the interviews that I had with them. Just like with Kobomsuk, I did 2 interviews with this duo to make sure I presented to you their story to the best of my ability. And if you watched all the way to the end, let me know what you thought. Their entire story was incredible to me, and seeing the guitars after hearing their story made me feel like I was bearing witness to something crazy that is still in the process of unfolding. I am of course in Korea right now, and as a reminder, the adventures that my partner and I are going on are all going to be documented on our other channel, Don and Clara, and I'll leave a link for that channel in the description box below too. And big shout out to my Patreon crew. You guys are amazing. I have been a little under the weather this month. I basically had allergy attack along with some cold cold. So I've been a little out of it at the beginning of this month, but when I get back to the States, I will for sure be setting up a live stream to catch up with you guys. That is it for today's episode. No tongue twister because I'm so crammed on time right now. But thank you all so much for watching and peace out.